What time did you get home?
I think I didn't do anything wrong, just wanted to have a little fun and feel alive again. I mean, it's not like I was out to hurt anyone. But now there's a lawyer's letter on my kitchen table, and my husband won't even look at me. All I did was wear a dress, let some guys dance with me, and now my whole life is blowing up. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The red dress hugged every curve perfectly. I'd bought it months ago, but never had the courage to wear it. Tonight felt different, though. Evan was working late again, buried in spreadsheets and tax documents like always. 9-year-old Mila was at a sleepover. For once, I had a night to myself. "You look absolutely stunning," my sister Jillian said as she applied her lipstick in my bedroom mirror. At 29, she still had that carefree energy I envied. "Evan's crazy if he doesn't appreciate what he has." "He appreciates me," I said, though the words felt hollow. "He's just busy with work." "When's the last time he took you dancing, or anywhere fun?" Jillian turned to face me, her expression serious. "Lorraine, you're 34, not 94. You deserve to feel alive." My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you." The same message I'd gotten 3 times this week. "See what I mean?" Jillian grabbed her purse. "Come on, let's go to the Velvet Lantern. Live a little." The club was exactly what I needed. Pulsing music, dim lighting, and an energy that made me forget about dirty dishes and parent-teacher conferences. I felt eyes on me the moment we walked in, and for the first time in months, I remembered what it was like to feel desirable. "Two Cosmos," Jillian told the bartender, a guy with dark hair and an easy smile. His name tag read, Marco. "Coming right up," he said, his eyes lingering on me just a moment longer than necessary. "First time here?" "For me, yes," I said, surprised by how flirtatious my voice sounded. "Well, welcome. I'm Marco. Let me know if you need anything." He slid our drinks across the bar with a wink. My phone buzzed again. "Evan. Everything okay? Haven't heard from you." I showed Jillian the text and rolled my eyes. "He's so clingy sometimes." "You don't have to respond immediately," she said. "You're allowed to have fun without checking in every 5 minutes." She was right. I was a grown woman, not a teenager with a curfew. I slipped my phone into my purse without responding. The music was intoxicating. When a tall guy with broad shoulders asked me to dance, I didn't hesitate. Then another, and another. It felt amazing to move to the beat, to feel attractive and wanted. One guy, probably in his late 20s, kept his hands on my waist as we swayed to the music. His touch was warm, confident. "You're beautiful," he whispered in my ear, and I smiled, letting myself enjoy the compliment. "Thanks," I said, not pulling away when his hands stayed on my hips a little longer than they should have. Jillian was dancing nearby with her own partner, giving me thumbs up and laughing. The night felt perfect, like I was finally remembering who I used to be before marriage and motherhood took over my identity. "Another drink?" Marco called out during a break in the music. "Absolutely," I said, leaning against the bar. He had this way of looking at me that made me feel like the only woman in the room. "Your husband's a lucky man," he said as he mixed my drink. "How do you know I'm married?" I asked, though my wedding ring made it obvious. "Ring," he said simply. "But also you have that look." "What look?" "Like you've been taking care of everyone else for so long, you forgot to take care of yourself." He slid the drink toward me. "Nothing wrong with remembering who you are." His words hit something deep inside me. When was the last time Evan had really seen me? Really looked at me the way Marco was looking at me right now? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Evan. I declined it and turned the phone face down on the bar. "Problems?" Marco asked. "Just my husband being paranoid," I said. "He thinks I can't handle a night out without him. Sounds controlling." "He's not usually... I mean, he just worries. But even as I said it, I wondered if Marco was right. When had Evan become so possessive? The rest of the night passed in a blur of music, drinks, and attention. I danced with several different men, each one making me feel more alive than I had in years. When that same broad-shouldered guy pulled me close during a slow song, I didn't resist. His hands moved from my waist to my lower back, and I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in ages. "We should get together sometime," he murmured. "I'm married," I said, but I didn't step away. "So? Doesn't mean you can't have friends." Before I could respond, Jillian appeared beside us. "Smile," she said, holding up her phone. The flash went off, capturing the moment. In the bright light, I saw someone across the room pointing at me, their mouth moving as they talked to their friend. I caught the words, "isn't that," and "wife," but the music was too loud to hear the rest. A chill ran down my spine, but I pushed the feeling away. I was overthinking things. I was just dancing, just having fun. There was nothing wrong with that. Was there? I woke up with a pounding headache and the taste of regret in my mouth. The house was quiet, too quiet. Usually, Saturday mornings were filled with Mila's chatter and the sounds of Evan making breakfast. But Mila was still at her sleepover, and Evan... I found him in the kitchen, sitting at the table with his laptop open and a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. He didn't look up when I entered. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound casual as I reached for the coffee pot. "Is it?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "What's that supposed to mean?" I poured myself coffee, noting how my hands trembled slightly. Evan finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. Somehow, that was worse. "What time did you get home last night, Lorraine?" "I don't know." "Late. You were already asleep." I sat across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Did you have a good evening? Get your work done?" "Don't." His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't try to turn this around on me." "Turn what around? I went out with my sister. I'm allowed to have fun." Evan turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was Jillian's Instagram story from last night. There I was, in that red dress, pressed close to a stranger on the dance floor. His hands were clearly visible on my lower back, my face tilted up toward his. Even I had to admit it looked intimate. "This is what you call having fun?" Evan asked. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. "It's just dancing, Evan. God, you're acting like I committed murder." "Just dancing?" He clicked to the next photo. This one showed me at the bar with Marco, leaning forward as he spoke in my ear, both of us laughing. "And this?" Talking to the bartender. "Jesus, Evan, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" He pulled out his phone. "Because I got 17 missed calls and texts from people asking if I knew my wife was at the Velvet Lantern grinding on random men." "Grinding? That's ridiculous. I was dancing. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife was acting single last night." I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I can't believe you're doing this. I went out for one night, and you're treating me like a criminal. You ignored my calls. Because I knew you'd be like this, jealous and controlling and..." "Controlling?" Evan's voice rose for the first time. "I texted you twice and called once because I was worried when I didn't hear from you. That's not controlling, that's caring." It felt controlling. "Everything feels controlling to you lately, Lorraine. When I ask about your day, when I want to spend time together, when I try to be affectionate, it's all too much for you. But apparently, strange men touching you at a club isn't too much." His words stung because they held a grain of truth I didn't want to examine. "You're twisting everything." "Am I? Or are you just upset that you got caught?" "Caught doing what? Dancing, having a conversation, feeling attractive for the first time in months?" "Feeling attractive?" Evan stared at me. What's that supposed to mean? I realized I'd said too much, revealed too much. Nothing. I wanted to feel good about myself. And you can't feel good about yourself at home? With your family? Before I could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and sighed. It's my mother. Don't answer it, I said quickly. He answered anyway. Hi, Mom. Yes, I saw them. No, we haven't talked about it yet. I know. Okay, I'll call you later. He hung up and looked at me with those disappointed eyes again. My mother saw the photos too. Apparently, they're all over social media. Your mother needs to mind her own business. My wife's behavior is my business, and by extension, my family's business. My behavior? I didn't do anything wrong? Didn't you? Evan closed his laptop and stood up. Lorraine, I've been trying to figure out what's happening to us. Why you've been so distant, so angry all the time. I thought maybe it was stress or maybe I was working too much. But looking at these pictures, seeing how happy you look with other men, maybe the problem isn't me at all. There is no problem. You're creating drama where none exists. Am I? He walked toward the doorway, then stopped. I'm going to pick up Mila from her sleepover. When I get back, we need to have a real conversation about where our marriage stands. Evan, wait. But he was already gone. I heard the front door close, then the sound of his car starting in the driveway. I grabbed my phone and called Jillian. Hey, how are you feeling this morning? She answered cheerfully. Terrible. Evan saw the photos. Oh, how bad was it? He's acting like I cheated on him, all because I danced with a few guys and talked to the bartender. There was a pause. Lorraine, some of those photos were pretty intimate. Not you, too. I'm not judging you. I just think maybe you should talk to Evan, explain that it was harmless fun. I tried. He won't listen. He's being completely unreasonable. Maybe give him some time to cool off. After we hung up, I spent the morning cleaning the house and trying to figure out what to say when Evan returned. I wasn't wrong. I knew I wasn't wrong. I'd done nothing but dance and have conversations. If Evan couldn't handle his wife being social and attractive, that was his problem, not mine. But as I scrubbed the kitchen counters, I couldn't shake the image of myself in those photos, the way I was pressed against that stranger, the intimate way Marco and I were talking at the bar. From the outside, I had to admit, it might look like something more than innocent fun, but it wasn't. It was just dancing, just conversation, just one night of feeling alive again. Wasn't it? Monday morning at Riverside Books felt different. I'd worked there for 3 years, and usually my co-workers barely looked up when I arrived. Today, I felt eyes following me as I walked to my station behind the customer service counter. Morning, Lorraine, said Janet, the store manager. Her tone was carefully neutral. Morning. I busied myself with organizing returned books, trying to ignore the whispers I was sure I was hearing. Around 10, my coworker Sarah approached the counter. Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? We stepped into the back room, surrounded by boxes of new arrivals and the smell of fresh paper. Look, I don't want to get involved in your personal business, Sarah began, but people are talking. About what? The photos from Saturday night. They're everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, even some local gossip groups. My stomach dropped. What are people saying? Just questions. About you and Evan. Someone said they saw him at Henderson and Associates yesterday. Henderson and Associates, the law firm downtown that handled divorces. That's ridiculous, I said quickly. Evan wouldn't. We're fine. Sarah looked uncomfortable. I'm just letting you know what I heard. Maybe you should call him? I tried calling Evan during my lunch break, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back, trying to keep my voice light and casual. He didn't call back. By afternoon, the whispers at work were getting louder. During my break, I checked my social media and felt sick. The photos were everywhere, shared and reshared with comments ranging from supportive to judgmental to downright nasty. "Girl needs to remember she's married," one comment read. "Her poor husband," said another. But there were supportive voices too. "She's just having fun. Nothing wrong with dancing." I screenshot the supportive comments and sent them to Jillian with a message. "See? Not everyone thinks I'm a terrible person." She responded quickly. "Maybe you should delete your social media for a while. Let things cool down." "Why should I hide? I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, but sometimes it's better to avoid drama." I was putting my phone away when Janet approached. "Lorraine, there's a call for you. Line 2. It was Mila's school. "Mrs. Voss, this is Principal Martinez. I'm calling because Mila had a difficult day today. She was crying during math class and told her teacher that her parents might not love each other anymore. I wanted to check in and see if everything's okay at home." My heart sank. "Oh, yes, everything's fine. Evan and I just had a small disagreement. Nothing serious. I understand, these things happen. But Mila seems quite upset. She asked if she could call her father." "Did you let her?" "We tried, but he didn't answer. She's in the office now, waiting for pickup. Are you able to come get her?" I left work early and drove to Mila's school, my mind racing. How had our private argument affected her so quickly? Evan and I had barely spoken in front of her. I found Mila sitting in the principal's office, her backpack clutched in her lap and her eyes red from crying. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, kneeling beside her chair. "Ready to go home?" She nodded but didn't speak until we were in the car. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" she asked quietly. "What? No, honey. Why would you think that?" "Daddy was sad this morning, and he slept in the guest room last night." I hadn't realized she'd noticed. "Daddy and I just had a disagreement. All married people disagree sometimes. It doesn't mean we don't love each other." "But what if you stop loving each other?" "That won't happen, Mila, I promise." But even as I said the words, I wondered if I was lying. That evening, Evan came home late again. Mila was already in bed, and I was waiting in the living room, ready to clear the air. "We need to talk," I said as he hung up his coat. "I agree." "Mila's upset. She thinks we're getting divorced." Evan's expression softened slightly. "I know. The school called me too. So you'll see how important it is that we work this out, for her sake." "I want to work it out, Lorraine. But I need to understand what's really going on with you." "Nothing's going on with me. You're the one making a mountain out of a molehill." "Am I?" "Because I spent today thinking about us, about our marriage, and I realized something. You've been pulling away for months. You're irritated when I touch you, annoyed when I try to talk to you, and now I find out you're seeking attention from other men." "I wasn't seeking anything. It just happened." "Did it? Or did you go out looking for validation because you've already checked out of our marriage?" "That's not... I haven't checked out." "Haven't you?" He sat on the edge of the couch, not beside me but across the room. "When's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you seemed happy to see me come home?" I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right, and we both knew it. I feel like I've lost myself," I admitted quietly. "Like I'm just Mila's mom and your wife, but I don't know who Lorraine is anymore." "So you thought you'd find her by flirting with strangers?" "I wasn't flirting. I was just being myself. The self that lets other men touch her while her husband sits at home? You're making it sound so much worse than it was." Evan pulled out his phone. "Lorraine, I need you to see something." He showed me a video I hadn't seen before. Someone had recorded me dancing with the broad-shouldered stranger, and it was much more intimate than I remembered. His hands were on my hips, mine were around his neck, and we were moving together in a way that looked sexual. "I don't remember it being like that," I whispered. "But it was like that. And this is what everyone else sees when they look at these photos and videos. Not a woman having innocent fun, but a married woman acting single. I stared at the video, feeling sick. I was just dancing? Were you? Or were you testing the waters to see what else was out there? That's not... I would never cheat on you, Evan. Wouldn't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you already did. The accusation hung in the air between us. I wanted to deny it, to explain that it really was just dancing, just fun, just one night of feeling attractive. But looking at that video, I could understand why he might think otherwise. I need some time to think, Evan said finally. About us, about what I want, about whether this marriage is worth fighting for. Of course it's worth fighting for. We have Mila. We have a life together. Do we? Because lately it feels like we're just roommates who happen to share a child. He stood up and headed toward the stairs. Where are you going? I asked. To bed. In the guest room. Evan, please, can't we just move past this? He stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to look at me. I don't know if I can, Lorraine. I really don't know. After he left, I sat alone in the living room, staring at my phone. The video played again automatically, and I watched myself move against a stranger in ways I'd never move against my own husband anymore. Maybe Evan was right. Maybe I had been testing the waters. But that didn't make me a bad person. Did it? The family meeting was Sandra's idea. Evan's mother had always been direct, but she'd also been fair to me over the years. I figured if anyone could help us work through this mess, it would be her. I was wrong. I think we should all sit down and discuss this like adults, she'd said when she called Tuesday evening. This affects the whole family, especially Mila. So here I was, sitting in Sandra and Ralph's living room on Wednesday night, feeling like I was on trial. Evan sat across from me in the armchair, a manila folder in his lap. His parents flanked him on the couch like bodyguards. Even 14-year-old Kayla was there, Evan's niece who usually adored me. Now, Sandra began, her voice crisp and businesslike. I think we all know why we're here. Actually, I'm not sure I do, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I thought this was about helping Evan and me work through a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Sandra's eyebrows shot up. Is that what you're calling it? Mom, Evan said quietly. Let me handle this. Fine, but I have things to say and I'm going to say them. Ralph, ever the peacemaker, cleared his throat. Maybe we should all just take a breath and... No, Sandra interrupted. I've been taking breaths for 3 days while watching my son fall apart because his wife decided to act like a single woman at some club. I didn't act like a single woman, I protested. I went dancing with my sister, that's all. That's all? Sandra pulled out her phone. Because I've seen the photos, Lorraine. We all have. The whole town has seen them. Heat flooded my cheeks. I can't control what other people post on social media. But you can control how you behave in public, Sandra shot back. You can control whether you let strange men put their hands all over you while you're wearing your wedding ring. They weren't all over me. We were dancing. Dancing, Kayla repeated quietly, and something in her tone made me look at her. The admiration I was used to seeing in her eyes was gone, replaced by confusion and disappointment. Yes, dancing, I said firmly. There's nothing wrong with dancing. Evan opened his folder and pulled out a stack of papers. I think we need to look at the facts. Facts? I laughed, but it sounded forced even to me. What facts? That I had fun for one night? That I felt attractive and alive for the first time in months? The facts, Evan continued calmly, are these. He held up a printed screenshot. This photo shows you pressed against a man who isn't your husband, his hands on your body, at 11:47 p.m. He set it on the coffee table and pulled out another. This one shows you at the bar with the bartender, leaning in close while he whispers in your ear at 12:23 a.m. Another photo joined the pile. This one shows you giving that same bartender your phone number. I didn't give him my number, I said quickly. Evan looked at me steadily. Didn't you? The room fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my answer. The truth was, I had given Marco my number, but only because he'd asked for it to add me to the club's VIP list for future events. It wasn't romantic, was it? He wanted to add me to their mailing list, I said weakly. Their mailing list, Sandra repeated flatly. Yes, for events and specials. Evan pulled out his phone. Should I call the club and ask about their mailing list policy? See if they usually collect numbers at the bar at midnight? You're twisting everything, I said, standing up abruptly. You're all sitting here acting like I committed adultery when all I did was have a conversation with a bartender. Sit down, Lorraine, Sandra said sharply. No, I won't sit here and be attacked by people who are supposed to care about me. We do care about you, Ralph said gently. That's why we're here. This doesn't feel like caring. This feels like an ambush. Evan set down his phone and looked at me with those disappointed eyes again. It's only an ambush if you have something to hide. I don't have anything to hide. Then explain this. He pulled out another paper, a phone bill with several numbers highlighted. These are calls to a number registered to Marco Feld, the bartender from the club. 3 calls on Sunday, 2 on Monday, 4 on Tuesday. The room spun slightly. I had called Marco, but only to explain about the photos, to make sure he understood that I was married and that nothing could happen between us. The calls had been innocent. Mostly innocent. I was explaining the situation to him, I said, making sure he understood that I'm married. It took 9 phone calls to explain that? Kayla asked quietly. I looked at her, this girl who used to think I was the coolest adult in the family, and saw only disappointment. You don't understand, I said desperately. None of you understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own life, to feel like you've disappeared into being just a wife and mother. So you decided to find yourself by betraying your family? Sandra's voice was ice cold. I didn't betray anyone. Didn't you? Evan stood up, his folder still in his hands. Because from where I'm sitting, my wife went out looking for male attention, found it, and then continued pursuing it even after she came home to her family. That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Lorraine? Tell us. Explain it in a way that makes sense. I looked around the room at their faces. Evan's hurt, Sandra's anger, Ralph's disappointment, Kayla's confusion. They'd already made up their minds about me. I wanted to feel beautiful, I said quietly. I wanted to remember what it was like to be desired, to be seen as more than just someone who packs lunches and does laundry. And you couldn't feel that way at home? Evan asked. When? When you're working 14-hour days? When you come home exhausted and fall asleep watching TV? When we haven't had a real conversation in months? So this is my fault? I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying we've both let our marriage slide, and I made a mistake trying to fix it the wrong way. A mistake, Sandra repeated. Is that what you're calling emotional infidelity now? It wasn't emotional infidelity. What would you call giving your number to another man? Calling him repeatedly? Seeking validation outside your marriage? I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came, because maybe, deep down, I knew she was right. I think, Evan said quietly, that we all need some time to think about what comes next. What comes next? I looked at him in alarm. What does that mean? It means I've made an appointment with a lawyer. The words hit me like a physical blow. A lawyer? Evan, you can't be serious. I'm very serious. But we can work this out. We can go to counseling. Can we? Because you still don't seem to understand what you did wrong. I understand that you're hurt, but nothing, Lorraine. You betrayed our marriage. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. And instead of taking responsibility, you're making excuses and blaming everyone else. I looked around the room desperately. Ralph, surely you can see that this is an overreaction. Ralph looked uncomfortable. I think maybe some time apart might help you both get perspective. Time apart? My voice came out as a whisper. Evan nodded. I think you should stay with Jillian for a while. What about Mila? Mila stays with me. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away, but she's already upset and confused, and I think she needs stability right now. I'm her mother. I provide stability. Do you? Sandra asked. Because from what I can see, you're the source of the instability. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of these people who had already decided I was the villain. Fine, I said, grabbing my purse. If that's how you all feel, fine, but don't expect me to apologize for wanting to feel alive again. Lorraine, Evan called as I headed for the door. I turned back, hoping to see some softness in his expression, some sign that he still loved me, despite everything. My lawyer will be in touch, he said quietly. I walked out of that house feeling like my world had just collapsed. But as I drove to Jillian's apartment, a small voice in the back of my head whispered that maybe, just maybe, I'd brought this on myself. I pushed that voice away. I had to, because if I listened to it, I'd have to admit that everyone else was right, and I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. The envelope arrived on Friday morning, delivered by a courier who made me sign for it like I was accepting a death warrant. In a way, I suppose I was. Henderson and Associates, Attorneys at Law, the letterhead read. I'd been dreading this moment since Evan's announcement at his parents' house, but seeing it in black and white still felt like a punch to the gut. I was staying at Jillian's apartment, sleeping on her couch and trying to pretend my life wasn't falling apart. She was at work, so I was alone when I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Petition for legal separation, the document began, citing irreconcilable differences and breach of marital trust. The words blurred as I read through the legal jargon. Evan was requesting primary custody of Mila, division of assets, and temporary spousal support. But it was the attached evidence that made my blood run cold. Photos from the club. Not just the ones I'd seen before, but others. Close-ups of my face as I danced with strangers, looking flushed and happy in ways I never looked at home. Screenshots of my phone calls to Marco, time-stamped and documented. Even a statement from someone at the club who'd witnessed our intimate conversation at the bar. My phone rang. Jillian's name flashed on the screen. Hey, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. How are you holding up? Evan's lawyer sent papers. There was a pause. What kind of papers? Legal separation. He wants primary custody of Mila. Oh, Lorraine, I'm so sorry. He can't do this, can he? Take my daughter away because I went dancing? Another pause, longer this time. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer too. I can't afford a lawyer. Evan controls all our finances. There are legal aid services. I shouldn't need legal aid. This is insane, Jillian. All I did was have one fun night out. I know, but maybe what? Maybe I should just roll over and let him destroy our family because he's jealous. Maybe you should think about what you really want here. Do you want to save your marriage, or do you want to be right? The question stung because I wasn't sure I knew the answer anymore. After we hung up, I called Marco. I told myself it was just to warn him that he might be dragged into legal proceedings, but if I was honest, I also needed to hear a friendly voice. Lorraine? Hey, I was wondering when you'd call again. Marco, I need to tell you something. My husband is filing for separation, and you might be contacted by lawyers. Seriously? Because we talked a few times? Because I gave you my number, and we had those conversations, and it looks bad. What looks bad? We're friends. Are we? Just friends? There was a pause. I mean, I like you. You're beautiful and funny, and if you were single, But I'm not single. Right, you're not single. But the way he said it made it sound like a technicality rather than a fact. I should go, I said quickly. Lorraine, wait. If you need someone to talk to, someone who understands what you're going through. I can't. This is already complicated enough. I hung up, but his words echoed in my mind. Someone who understands what you're going through. Evan certainly didn't understand. Neither did his family. Even Jillian seemed to be questioning my version of events. Maybe Marco was the only one who really got it. That afternoon, I drove to Mila's school to pick her up, only to find Evan's car already in the parking lot. Through the window, I could see him helping her into his passenger seat. I parked and got out, walking quickly toward his car. "Excuse me," I called. "What are you doing?" Evan rolled down his window, "Picking up my daughter. Our daughter. And it's my day. Actually, according to the temporary custody arrangement, it's my day." "What temporary custody arrangement?" He handed me another legal document through the window. "The one filed with the separation papers. You'll need to review it with your attorney." "I don't have an attorney." "Then you should get one." Mila looked between us with wide, frightened eyes. "Mommy, are you coming home?" "Soon, sweetheart," I said, reaching through the window to touch her hand. "Mommy just needs to sort some things out." "When?" she asked. I looked at Evan, pleading silently for him to be reasonable, but his expression was stone cold. "I don't know, baby, but I love you very much." As they drove away, I stood alone in the school parking lot, feeling more isolated than I'd ever felt in my life. That evening, I tried calling some of our mutual friends, hoping to find support, or at least understanding. The conversations were awkward and brief. "I don't want to take sides," said Jennifer, whose husband played golf with Evan. "It's really between you two," said Amy, who'd been my friend first, but now seemed distant. "Maybe you should focus on working things out," said Lisa, before quickly ending the call. By Sunday, I was desperate. I drove to our house, my house, and used my key to let myself in. Everything looked the same, but it felt different. Foreign. Evan was in the kitchen making lunch. He looked up when I entered, his expression guarded. "What are you doing here, Lorraine?" "I live here. This is my home." "Not anymore. The separation agreement specifies—" "I don't care what it specifies. This is insane, Evan. We're throwing away 12 years of marriage because of one night of dancing?" "It wasn't just one night of dancing, and you know it." "Fine. Maybe I made some poor choices. Maybe I got caught up in the attention and let things go too far, but that doesn't mean our marriage is over. Doesn't it?" "No. It means we have problems to work through. It means we need counseling, not lawyers." Evan set down the sandwich he was making and really looked at me for the first time in days. "Do you even hear yourself, Lorraine? You're still minimizing what you did." "Poor choices. Let things go too far. You can't even say the words emotional affair. Because it wasn't an affair. What would you call it?" I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because what would I call it? The dancing, the phone number, the calls to Marco, the way I'd felt when he paid attention to me? "I was confused," I said finally. "I felt neglected and invisible, and when someone made me feel attractive again, I didn't handle it well. And now? Now what? How do you feel now, about Marco, about what happened, about us?" It was a loaded question, and we both knew it. The honest answer was that I missed the way Marco made me feel. I missed feeling desired and interesting and alive. But I also missed my family, my daughter, my life. "I feel like I made mistakes," I said carefully. "But I also feel like you're punishing me way beyond what those mistakes deserve." Evan nodded slowly. "And that's why this won't work." "What won't work?" "Us, because you still think you're the victim here." Before I could respond, Mila came running into the kitchen. "Mommy, you're home!" She threw her arms around me, and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Hi, baby. I missed you so much." Are you staying for lunch? I looked at Evan over her head. His expression had softened slightly, but his answer was firm. Mommy can't stay, sweetheart, but maybe you can visit her at Aunt Jillian's sometime soon. Visit, like I was a distant relative instead of her mother. I want Mommy to come home, Mila said, her voice small. I know you do. But sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. As I drove back to Jillian's apartment, I realized that Evan was serious about this separation. He wasn't bluffing or trying to scare me into apologizing. He was actually prepared to end our marriage over what I still believed was a misunderstanding. But maybe, for the first time, I was starting to understand that it didn't matter what I believed. What mattered was what I'd done, and what I'd done had consequences I was only beginning to comprehend. The question was, what was I going to do about it now? 3 months later, I sat in a courthouse waiting room, watching my lawyer shuffle through papers with the kind of resigned expression that told me everything I needed to know about our chances. Mrs. Voss, he said quietly, I need to be honest with you. The evidence against you is substantial, and your husband's legal team has been very thorough. I looked through the glass doors at Evan, sitting with his lawyer and looking more composed than I'd seen him in months. Beside him sat Sandra, her arm around Mila, who was clutching a stuffed animal and looking lost. But it's not like I had a physical affair, I said for the 100th time. Emotional infidelity isn't even a real legal concept. Actually, it is. And the documented phone calls, the photos, the witness statements from the club, they paint a clear picture of a spouse seeking romantic connection outside the marriage. I was seeking friendship, validation, not romance. My lawyer looked at me with the same expression I'd been seeing for months, the look that said I was missing something fundamental about my situation. Mrs. Voss, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about what you intended, it's about what you did and how those actions affected your family. The bailiff called our case, and we filed into the courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. Evan's lawyer presented their case methodically. The photos from the club, blown up and displayed on an easel. The phone records showing my calls to Marco. Screenshots of text messages I'd forgotten I'd sent. Messages that looked much more flirtatious in the harsh light of the courtroom than they had felt when I'd written them. Your Honor, Mrs. Voss engaged in a pattern of behavior that constituted emotional infidelity and abandonment of her marital duties. She sought romantic validation outside her marriage, maintained an inappropriate relationship with another man, and showed no remorse for the damage caused to her family. When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain what had really happened, how isolated I'd felt, how much I'd missed feeling attractive and interesting, how the dancing and the conversations with Marco had been innocent, just a way to remember who I used to be before marriage and motherhood consumed my identity. I never intended to hurt anyone, I said, looking directly at Judge Morrison. I was just trying to find myself again. Mrs. Voss, the judge said, can you explain why you continued contact with Mr. Feld after returning home to your family? He was a friend, someone I could talk to. About what? I hesitated. About feeling trapped. About missing my old life. About wondering if there was more out there for me. The words hung in the air, and I realized how they sounded. Like I'd been shopping for a replacement husband while still married to the first one. And during these conversations, did Mr. Feld express romantic interest in you? He said he liked me, but I made it clear I was married. Did you make it clear you intended to stay married? Another hesitation, because the truth was, I hadn't been sure. I was confused about what I wanted. Evan's lawyer called Marco as a witness. He'd flown in from out of state, where he'd moved after the club fired him for getting involved with a married customer. She told me she was unhappy, he testified. That her husband didn't appreciate her, didn't make her feel beautiful anymore. She asked what I thought she should do. And what did you tell her? That life's short, that she deserved to be happy. Did you encourage her to leave her husband? Marco glanced at me, then back at the lawyer. I told her she had options. The final blow came when they called Mila to testify. My 9-year-old daughter, looking tiny in the witness chair, answered questions about how Mommy had been sad and angry before the night at the club, and how she'd heard me on the phone talking to a man who wasn't Daddy. How did that make you feel? Evan's lawyer asked gently. Scared, Mila whispered. I thought Mommy might go away. When it was over, Judge Morrison didn't need long to deliberate. This court finds that Mrs. Voss engaged in behavior that constituted emotional infidelity and contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. While she may not have intended to cause harm, her actions demonstrated a fundamental breach of marital trust and commitment. She awarded Evan primary custody, with me getting supervised visitation every other weekend. The house, the bank accounts, even my car, everything went to him. I was granted minimal spousal support and ordered to pay for my own legal fees. The court recognizes that Mrs. Voss may have been experiencing personal difficulties, Judge Morrison continued, but those difficulties do not excuse the choices she made or the damage those choices caused to her family. As the gavel fell, I felt my legs give out. My lawyer caught my arm, steadying me as the reality hit. I'd lost everything: my husband, my daughter, my home, my life as I knew it. Evan approached me as people filed out of the courtroom. Lorraine, he said quietly. I looked up at him through tears I couldn't stop. Evan, please, we can still fix this. No, he said sadly. We can't. But I hope someday you'll understand why it had to end this way. I understand now, I said desperately. I see what I did wrong. I can change. I know you can, but not for me, and not for us. That ship has sailed. He started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, I did love you. I loved you for 12 years. But I can't love someone who doesn't respect our marriage enough to stay faithful to it. I was faithful. Were you? Really? The question followed me as I walked out of the courthouse alone. Evan left with Mila and his parents, a family unit I was no longer part of. They looked whole without me, functional in a way we hadn't been in months. 6 months later, I was living in a studio apartment across town, working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet. I saw Mila every other weekend, supervised visits that felt stilted and artificial. She was polite but distant, like I was an acquaintance rather than her mother. Evan had started dating someone, a teacher at Mila's school who was kind and stable and everything I apparently hadn't been. Mila liked her, which hurt more than I could have imagined. I still talked to Marco occasionally. He'd moved to Portland and was bartending at a different club. Sometimes he'd call when he was drunk and tell me he thought about me, wondered what might have been if I'd been single when we met. Those calls used to make me feel better, like maybe I wasn't crazy for feeling the connection I'd felt. But lately, they just made me sad. Because I was starting to understand that the connection I'd been seeking wasn't really about Marco at all. It was about feeling valuable and desired and important. Feelings I should have been able to find within my marriage, or within myself. The final paperwork came on a Tuesday. Divorce decree, signed and sealed. 12 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal documents. I sat in my tiny apartment that night, looking at the papers and finally, understanding what everyone had been trying to tell me for months. It wasn't that I'd had a physical affair. It wasn't that I'd fallen in love with Marco or planned to leave Evan for him. It was that I'd opened a door in my heart to another man while I was still married to the first one. I'd shared my unhappiness with a stranger instead of working on it with my husband. I'd sought validation and excitement outside my marriage instead of fighting for it inside my marriage. I'd betrayed Evan in ways that went deeper than sex, in ways that made him question everything we'd built together. And when he'd tried to talk to me about it, I'd made excuses and blamed him and refused to take responsibility for my choices. I understood now why he couldn't forgive me. Not because what I'd done was unforgivable, but because I'd spent so long insisting I hadn't done anything wrong. The truth was, I had done something wrong. I'd checked out of my marriage emotionally long before that night at the club. The dancing and the phone calls and the attention-seeking, those were just symptoms of a problem I'd been too proud or too scared to acknowledge. I'd lost my family because I'd been more interested in feeling right than in being right, and by the time I'd figured out the difference, it was too late. As I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the ruins of my old life, I finally understood what Evan had been trying to tell me all along. Marriage wasn't about finding yourself. It was about choosing to build something with another person, even when that person couldn't give you everything you thought you needed. I'd made a different choice, and now I was living with the consequences. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone looking for excitement and validation and ended up with neither. I'd wanted to feel alive and instead felt more dead inside than ever. I'd thought I was finding myself, but I'd actually lost everything that mattered. Marco stopped calling after a while. Evan remarried 2 years later, and Mila was the flower girl at their wedding. I wasn't invited, of course, but I saw the photos on social media. Mila looked happy in a way I hadn't seen since before that night at the club. That's when I finally deleted my social media accounts and stopped trying to justify my choices to anyone who would listen. Because the only person who needed to understand what I'd done wrong was me. And I finally did. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.